to Pals in Politics, the place to hear from those teaching, learning, and impacted by politics, government, citizenship, and democracy.
Hello there, and welcome to our latest session of Pals and Politics. This is the podcast for teachers, learners, and generally anyone who wants to know more about the worlds of government, politics, citizenship, and democracy, and hear from those who are living with politics in their own way and in their own lives, and maybe even their own careers as well. As always, this is non-scripted, there's no editing, it is purely an unfiltered conversation where you get to hear the views of the very interesting people who have generously given up their time to talk to us today. If you like what you hear, please do hit the subscribe button. And if you want to hear more, you can go to our politics classroom community where you can find the extended chats and we can hear even more ideas. So let's get straight into today. I'm exceptionally fortunate to be joined by Andrew Hampton. Hi, Andrew.
Hello. Hello, James.
And this is an enormous privilege as someone who has worked in education. Andrew is an absolute heavy hitter in the world of teaching and education. He's a renowned educationalist, leadership consultant, and an author who, after 18 years of headship, didn't just go and sit on a beach. He's actually worked hard to change the way we think about school culture. And he has been the author and mind and brains behind the absolutely phenomenal, and I can say this because my school used it, Girls on Board program. He's also created the Working with Boys program, and he's also the author of How to Run a School. So, wow, Andrew, welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here. It really is. I'm looking forward to this.
I think you're going to be able to offer so much to the people listening, as you have, I know, to so many people who have been inspired by your work. And when I've told people you've been part of this podcast, there's been genuine excitement about what you're going to say. So thank you so much for taking the time.
The pressure.
Yeah, don't disappoint now. So I think it's fair to say, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's fair to say, Andrew, your work, at its heart, your work is about mutual respect, dignity, and empathy.
Yes.
So let's start with quite a loaded question.
Sure.
How do you feel our political leaders,
yes,
and I'm thinking globally here, how do you think our political leaders are doing when it comes to embodying those values themselves?
Yeah, I think it's a mixed bag, isn't it? And I think before we start to kind of lay into some of those people who are not embodying those things, and there's very obvious candidates there, I think it's kind of almost impossible, isn't it, to be a national leader, particularly a very high-profile one, in which, I mean, if you're a leader of one of the G7 countries or something like that, because politics just inevitably throws you curveballs, where the integrity of your policies and your standpoint and what you were elected on, your manifesto, is just blown apart by circumstances, by somebody in your party doing the wrong thing, and so I think if I were to go into politics, I would have to go in with a kind of a little bit of a a protective shield to my own self-esteem and my own sense of integrity, because it's going to be dented at some point or another. Having said that, no, I mean, I don't want to make a long answer of this. I think the Conservative Party broke that sense that we demand and want to see integrity in our leaders. They just smashed that. And of course, in this country, we have the Nolan principles, which I think is a great teaching point, because I know this podcast is also about teachers having great political debates with their children. And going back to those Nolan principles, I think for young people and pupils at school is a really good way to match up what is happening, say in the UK, against what should be happening. Of course, in terms of what Trump is doing right now, Trump has did in his first 4 years of office, just smashed the idea that the truth is an entity in itself. And I think that is incredibly dangerous. And I think you're probably going to want to pursue that question a bit more as we go through this podcast. But, I think we live in dangerous times when the truth really is just holding less and less sway in everyone's minds, really.
Well, it's the phrase post-truth world that's sort of found its way into the vernacular now, absolutely. And I think you can see it as well with other world leaders, Putin, absolutely. And I think what I've been minded by, or been very much cognizant of in recent weeks and months is the idea that actually the rules-based order now seems to have been replaced by a might is right. Right. I'm strong enough to do it and I want to do it. I'm going to do it.
Yes, and if I'm rich enough, you can't touch me and you won't arrest me and you won't hold me to account because I'm just so rich. You can't find me, and I've got as many lawyers as I can possibly stick into a courtroom to stop you from ever pursuing me. And it's a very dangerous time from that point of view, sort of total lack of accountability.
Yeah, well, it's great you've not held back right from the start there, Andrew. Thank you. Can you think, just so we don't go completely down a rabbit hole of
exactly,
can you think of any leaders who, and I appreciate what you were saying about having to adopt some kind of persona and mask to protect yourself. Can you think of any leaders, current or recent, that you feel have done a good job of at least trying to embody those values?
Yeah, I mean, I think let's start with Keir, because he's our Prime Minister at the moment. And I don't want to be, as it were, too political in the sense of like, I'm a fan of Keir or I'm not a fan of Keir. But I do think that he's tried very, very hard to steer a sensible course of prudence, of not wanting to condemn the states, not wanting to rub Trump up the wrong way, because I'm sure around the table there are some people at cabinet saying, well, we should stand up to this bully and we should tell him this and we should tell him that, and other people going, yeah, but Trump is, and America is still an incredibly powerful country, so let's not shoot ourselves in the foot. On the other hand, there will be plenty of people cheering for the Prime Minister of Spain right now, who is doing exactly that. He's going, yeah, two fingers up to you, mate. We're not going to play your game, and we're going to possibly even come out of NATO. I mean, it's a very interesting ploy. Whether that plays nationally with Spain, I've absolutely no idea. But there are going to be lots of people in the UK going, I like that standing up to bullies attitude, and that's a bit British, isn't it? At the end of the day, the sort of Churchillian two fingers,
dog.
Yeah, don't mess with us, mate, because we may be small, but we can outmaneuver people, and I think I'd go Spain right now. Yeah.
And this is in no way an endorsement. When I talk to a lot of young people, and you talk about these values, Zach Walensky keeps coming up quite a bit at the moment, as well as someone who's at least perceived, rightly or wrongly, to be embodying these values. So yes, I think, as you said, it's a mixed bag at the moment. So I suppose as an educationalist, the next sort of obvious question from that is, do you see this, or have you seen this bleeding through into school culture and narratives in schools?
Probably. I mean, I'm not a head teacher now, so I do go into schools a lot, but I'm tending to talk to girls about their friendships. So it's not necessarily a particularly political thing. But they've, as you say,
I don't know.
But the post-truth world kind of started, didn't it, in his first term? So that's 2016.
Yeah, 10 years ago.
That's 10 years ago. So these kids have grown up in a post-truth world. So I can't help feeling inevitably that does influence their relationship with the truth. However, reality is reality, and a parent or a teacher is going to hold up a mirror to a child who is kind of trying to wing one, and kind of say, no, that's just not true. So the truth, you can knock it about, but at the end of the day, the truth is still the truth, isn't it? So yeah, that's what I kind of think about that.
No. I think it's a really fair point, and a lot of people, and I'm not saying I would agree with this, because I don't want to go down necessarily a bashing road, but a lot of people point to social media, whether intentional or not. Some people say it's just because social media rewards certain types of behaviour. It rewards sort of short messaging rather than complex ideas.
Yeah.
How much do you think social media plays into this sort of post-truth environment, whether that's in politics, at a global level, or in schools?
Well, it does. I mean, and no doubt all the kids are getting their news from social media, so they're obviously not indulging in any kind of mainstream media, whether that's television or newspapers or anything. But at the same time, I often think adults think that the kids are fools, and they're not fools. And I'm absolutely sure that many, many children can look at an AI-generated piece of nonsense which appears to show, a public figure getting very angry or throwing something, or and no, that's clearly made up, and they can spot the AI generation. So I think they let a lot of it wash over them, and they're pretty savvy in that sense. Now, and some aren't, and some are very influenced by that, and some go down a conspiracy type theory rabbit hole. But then didn't they always?
Mm.
What's the name of that man who used to play in goal for Coventry City, who came up with all sorts of
Yeah.
wild stuff, you know, David,
Uh,
somebody, yeah.
I know who you mean, but I can't
Yes, I'll think of the name. You know, so there's always been people like that, and they've always had a medium by which they did sort of penetrate the consciousness of the public, whether that's in the Daily Mail or on kind of late night television or something. So I guess those people are there, and perhaps they're a little bit more prevalent now. But I suppose I have a lot of trust in young people when they talk to me. You know, my nephew particularly, who's 20 years old, when he talks to me about all this stuff, I kind of go, no, he's across this stuff. I mean, he really is. He knows what he's doing, and he knows the fake from the real, and you know, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I read a study in the John Smith Youth Poll, which was conducted last year, which is the biggest survey conducted of young people and political opinion, and it showed that 64% of young people by that 16 to 18, their primary news source was TikTok.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah.
I'm not sure how I feel about that.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not sure if you've got any reflections.
Well, I mean, you know, I think in many ways, I can admit it, my primary source of news at the moment is X, because the Times, you know, I'm a subscriber to the Times, and it just doesn't really tell me anything. At the time when the world is blowing up, we hear that it's a big story that Prince William is mildly a Christian. You know, that's the headline, and I'm going, I just don't understand why you think that's important on any level whatsoever, really. And then James O'Brien on LBC was saying how the Telegraph had taken the news. Trump was saying the BBC are terrible because they used AI to put words into my mouth, and I hate them. And then he kind of goes on, and then the Telegraph just reported that, but just literally cut out that bit where he completely lied and just left in the bit where he's very cross with the BBC because they distorted you know. So, you know, I got that from watching X. So I suppose what my algorithm on X, and I want to talk about algorithms a bit, is full of CNN and a little bit of Fox News, and so clips from America talking about the war, talking about Trump. And so between all of those things, I get a range of different opinions coming at me. And I've definitely heard things over the last couple of weeks which I wish had been true, but turned out perhaps not to be. But it's all floating in my mind. Whereas if you turn on ITV News, you know, you just get a very odd and sanitized version of, you know, taking in a huge event and a hugely complex thing squashed into 1 minute, and that's just somebody's opinion, really. So, you know, I think actually for me, social media, I curate it, and I feel like I'm curating it reasonably successfully.
And absolutely, I think what you're saying there is a really interesting point about just how people are driven to it, but by perhaps the sanitization of the mainstream media, who perhaps are buying into it, the bigger cultural shift about how we want our news presented to us.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, absolutely.
And the effect that's then having on political discourse and discourse more generally. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I suppose this, I'm not sure I can probably guess what your answer is going to be here, actually.
Yeah.
$1 million question then: should we follow Australia in banning social media or not?
I mean, I've heard whispers from Australia that it's not going very well. I personally followed, like you, quite a lot of stuff on LinkedIn about the arguments coming from educationalists. I chose not to include myself in that debate, but I read a number of very convincing arguments from educationalists saying banning things isn't really the answer. And I think generally speaking, that would be my take on the use of phones for young people. So that is certainly something that I have to deal with when I'm training people to do Girls on Board and the Working Boys program. What are we going to do about the use of phones? And I think that it is about self-regulation. Whatever you do in terms of restricting their access, turning the phone into a brick phone. I know that Eton recently have said, you know, you can only use a brick phone or whatever. And then, I'm sorry to advertise this, but I do think it's a good company called Schools Mobile. And I was at another school today where they're using it. Marlborough College are using it. And, you know, that's a very good solution as well. But even at Marlborough, they're going, yeah, but, you know, put a VPN on there and you don't really know what's going on at all. So it's very, very difficult. So for me, it has always and should always be about self-regulation. And I mean, just anecdotally, I'm going back to probably 1994 or something like that, when the Nokia phone first came in. And at the King Alfred School in the staff room, people were raging about these things, saying, "Oh my God, you know, ban them, ban them, ban them." And then it was the school counsellor who said, "Or teach them how to use them." You know, and it's over 30 years ago. That debate was happening then, you know, and it is still now, isn't it? Or teach them how to use them.
Yeah, I remember growing up and being hooked on MSN Messenger and being told that this was an awful tool. Absolutely. You can't stop technology, in my opinion. It is, I think, as you say, there's a lot, though, in terms of what we have to do as schools to help, and parents, it's not all on schools, to obviously prepare students for that.
And on that, I think that schools should be requiring parents to train. I think you should have, whether you're in the private sector or state sector, have an agreement which is a proper contractual agreement with the parents. You must undertake at least an hour of training every year. And then, of course, you can notch that up. And part of that training will be about, well, I'm a parent, I don't really know what my kid's getting on in her bedroom. You really should know, you know. I don't understand these phones. Well, you should understand. You should understand TikTok. You should understand the algorithms. Come on. You know, that's not good enough. And then, well, schools will know. Well, how do schools know? Well, the teachers do the work. We look at these things. We talk to the children. How does this work? We go to YouTube. We find out what they're doing. Why can't a parent do that? Well, they can do that. So I think this, you know, we're into this kind of like helplessness amongst parents in the face of a tsunami of issues. And it's all back to schools again. Well, I think the schools should flip that and say, no, this is a partnership. You need to do the training as well.
Absolutely, but I also think the problem is that there is a default, I think, expectation whenever there's perceived to be a social crisis or a problem that the schools have to fix it. And I think what I found really interesting, and I don't know if you've got any thoughts about this, Andrew, when Charlie Kirk was assassinated last September, we had at Political Education for Students, we had head teachers calling us saying, "James, we're not sure what's going on. This person's been killed." But our students are particularly the boys, are taking it really badly. And we had to explain to them it was because actually Charlie Kirk was a TikTok user. His entire platform was TikTok. But because so many teachers generally don't use TikTok themselves, a lot of them hadn't heard of Charlie Kirk until the assassination. But young people, even if they didn't agree with him, had seen and bought in a connection. And I think it just showed that there is such now a gap between where younger people and older people, and I include myself in this, are getting their news. Whereas before it used to be TV, radio, or newspaper, and schools could control that much more easily.
Absolutely.
That's gone.
And I think that, you know, you're driving at the heart of the just generational disconnect that's happening at the moment, which is probably as bad as it's ever been in the history of humanity. And not only are the grown-ups, you know, whether that's parents or teachers, sort of, you know, not doing what the children are doing and not really taking it seriously, but they're also kind of indulging like, oh, it's absolutely terrible, and you know, their brains are being affected. The young people today, they have a tiny brains attention span because of this. I'm going, I don't think any of that is true. That's just young people doing what they're doing, and you are just railing at it as if you are King Canute. You know, it's just, come on, guys. You know, we've got to get with the program here, both parents and teachers, but particularly parents, actually, because all this stuff is happening at home. So what I'm promoting, and if I can promote my book,
please do.
How to Run a School. In there, I talk about online lives lessons, and I've now kind of said, I think a better title for that lesson would be, What's My Algorithm? Now, this is a kind of an innocent sharing, but it needs to start with that sense of sharing between the generations. So the idea would be that you would, as a form teacher, you would invite maybe a pair of kids, maybe 2 boys and then 2 girls, alternate weeks, to say, you just take some clips from what your algorithm is on TikTok or whatever, and bring that to the class for 5 minutes. Just show us what you can tend to look at. We're not trying to catch you out here. We're not trying to judge you, blah, blah, blah. But I, personally, I would love some more cat videos. So, hey, and as a teacher, I might kind of say, oh, actually, this is my stream and this is my algorithm. And also, and I know it's incredibly obvious, and I guess everybody knows this, but really just emphasizing that if you stay on a particular clip, then the algorithm starts to feed you more. So personally, I've kind of gone, yeah, I've had enough of watching, girls fight in school, because I was like, horrified by a couple of those videos, and realized, of course, that I'd spent a minute and a half watching them. So now when it comes back, I go, no, and I just wonder whether that's not quite a good way of just sort of emphasizing to kids that there is an algorithm which is reacting pretty much in real time, as they say, and so you can control it. So you don't get fed stuff that actually is making you quite depressed and so on and so forth. But it's about having that sort of informal, non-judgmental time face-to-face with the kids and the teacher, going, yeah, and I watched this and you watched that. Because in the old days, as in 20 years ago, I would sit down with my daughter and we'd watch Friends together, and we just don't do that. Although my eldest daughter, who's got two sons aged 11 and 13, they do sit down and watch Superstore, which is an American sitcom. And I'm going, that's brilliant, because how many families sit down and watch anything together, whether it's streamed or whatever, and so we just don't have that shared cultural experience on a daily basis of what's happening.
It'd be really interesting to hear then, Andrew, how equipped do you think schools are to do things like that?
I don't see why they can't. There's nothing to stop you doing it. I mean, the school filter probably won't allow it, so let's just tether to 5G and do it like that. You know what I mean? So it's going to be controlled, and it needs to be thought through. And if I was told to do that, I'd kind of go, like, I want to talk to the kids about how they think that might work and how we get the technology to work, and also lots of safeguards and risk assessments around it. But let's do it.
Do you think there are psychological barriers to doing it?
As in, would the kids want to share?
Well, would the kids want to share? Would teachers feel comfortable in as you say, you mentioned form tutors there, many of whom won't necessarily be politics experts or know what's going on themselves hugely.
Yeah. No,
would they feel they want to?
That's my point. They need to. If you're a form teacher, you are a little bit of a slice of life, aren't you? You are kind of a little bit of a life coach. You're meant to just be there for the kids, understand them, listen to them, offer a little bit of your personal advice, whatever that is. I'm just a human being. I'm a biology teacher, I'm a music teacher, I'm a drama teacher, whatever. From my perspective, I'm married, I'm not married, I have kids, I don't have kids, but I'm here to be with you as the human face of the school. So that's why I think it would be incredibly appropriate to kind of just like, so some teachers might, I'm not on any social media, so I have no idea what you're talking about. And other people like me I've got a YouTube channel I'd like to show you, or whatever, but let's just stop trying to be afraid, or stop being afraid of that.
So it's about braver.
Yeah, definitely being a bit braver, and just kind of realizing that generational disconnect, which is being caused by this idea that the kids are doing something that the adults have just no understanding of, and the adults can say, well, I don't really understand that. That's not good enough. That's just not good enough.
Okay, our final question before we take a break then is, actually, you've segued very nicely into this. You've talked about your book, How to Run a School.
Yeah.
Many of the people listening might be thinking about becoming writers themselves, or be thinking about some of the ideas that you are talking about and how to communicate those in their own way.
Yeah.
What's your advice to people who might be thinking about translating the real world experience into written text?
I think go for it. I want to promote the idea of KDP, which if you've not heard of, I'll describe to you. So KDP stands for Kindle Digital Publishing, which is mysteriously unknown by many, many people. But this is an Amazon offshoot, and you can, because Jill Berry did this, I know she was on your podcast, she's written a couple of sort of collections of short novels, and she basically wrote them, got them proofed, Word document, designed a cover, make sure that everything is the right size, and that's it. Send it to KDP. 2 days later, that book is on every marketplace in the world that Amazon goes to, which is nearly everywhere, as a print to order opportunity. Self-publishing, and the minimum price is, I think, £9.95, of which you probably come back with £4 or £5.
Wow! And is that how you do your publishing?
It's not. I didn't do that, but I may well do in the future. So, sorry, no, I am on KDP for one of my books. So the first book I wrote was called When Girls Fall Out, which is the Girls on Board Parent Guide, and I did get it designed, and I became an Amazon seller. and then I got a printer to print the books, and I'm still doing that now. So I've got 1,000 books in my garage, and every night I send another 300 or 400 off to Amazon. So I've sold 6,000 copies of that. But about 2 years ago, I also put it on KDP as well.
Okay.
So you can buy it from either. The relationship between the two, do you buy it from KDP or do you buy it from me? I've never quite understood. Amazon is quite complicated, but I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just going to go for it anyway. But what it does mean is that I've been able to sell in America. So I sold about 150 copies in America solely through KDP. Okay. So I would say, that whole kind of need to find a publisher, blah, blah, blah. No, you don't. Just do it through KDP. It is so simple. It's just unreal.
And last question off the back of that, with programs now, and I won't name them, but where essentially you can get AI to write a book for you with some sophisticated prompts. Right. What are your thoughts about that?
It's really hard, isn't it? And I'm sitting here thinking, I'm really enjoying making short movies at the moment, and I'm wondering how long will it be before I can, as you say, put in some sophisticated prompts and come up with a 5-minute movie. I came up with a 10-second movie the other day that was absolutely exactly what I wanted. So I'm not fighting that. I don't think we can fight that. No. But it does put us in a strange realm, doesn't it? It really does. Yeah.
And there's a whole other conversation to be had about where AI.
I kind of feel like ask me in 5 years' time, and I'll let you know what I think.
So I think even a year ago we weren't in this position. So the speed of which is definitely something that will catch us out. Yeah. So we're going to take a bit of a breather there, Andrew. If you want to hear more from Andrew, please do join our politics community and politics classroom community, and you can hear the rest of our episode. And as I say, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel and post any comments any reflections on what Andrew's been saying right down below. Thank you very much, Andrew. We'll be back shortly.